Hello, good morning, and welcome back to the program. You are been listening to the program Addiction and Recovery, and I am your host Ramnaresh Dwarika, and we have been speaking about enabling drug addiction. You know, a lot of people, without unwittingly, sometimes by just trying to be helpful, they don't realize it that they're enabling the person to continue to use the drugs by softening the consequences of their behavior. So, as I said then, and I'll repeat it again, no drug addict or alcoholic is going to stop using drugs unless to continue to use becomes more painful. Because a person who has become dependent on drugs for a long time, when they stop, it is very painful to cope with life. They have to learn new coping skills. And as a result, they continue to use the drugs for fear of these withdrawal symptoms that they experience: insomnia, hearing voices, hallucinations, depression, anxiety, and all of that. These are some of the withdrawal symptoms of alcoholism and drug addiction. And these can be very, very scary. So, this is why a person who has a problem, very often they need professional help. They need additional help if they're going to be able to stop and stay stopped. There, as I mentioned, there are few people who can do it on their own because most of them sometimes have not reached the stage of compulsive addiction, compulsive alcoholism. So that the point here is that there are other symptoms. Like I alluded to, a person may not be now using the drugs just because they're enjoying it, because it tastes good, or they you know they use it as a social lubricant, as we say, to socialize and all of that. They have moved to becoming dependent. They are self-medicating with the drug. And once a person has reached to that point, it is very difficult for them to be able to do it on their own without professional help. So that, because especially where a person might have started using drugs when they were very young, as a teenager, before teenage life, you would have been guided by your parents. Most of the decisions for you would have been made by your parents. They fed you, they chose your clothing, your shoes, your school, your subjects, and all of that they would have assisted. But in that transition from young adult to adult, the teenage life, you have to start making decisions for yourself. You have to start learning to cope with the problems of life. And if at that and that is at the time when most people would have been introduced to drugs. This is when most people their journey into addiction. And what happens because of the gradual dependence on drug, they are unable to learn proper coping skills, how to deal with things as so-called normal folks will. And over a period of time, the first thing that comes to the mind when they see a problem or they see a situation that they feel inadequate to, that's when their mind will go to take that drink or take that smoke, take that drug, so that they will not have learned proper coping skills. So that even though a person, say at age 45, 50, or 35, a grown adult, decides to stop, yes, they are not foolish, they're not stupid, they realize the drug is causing problems, and they have all honest intentions to stop. But because of the stigma associated with alcoholism and drug addiction, a lot of times people do not want to admit publicly or to anyone that they have a problem with the drug. I was speaking to a relative yesterday who was giving me the same story. This young man who has a problem with alcohol, but who will not admit. And that is a challenge most of the time for family members and friends. The young people, especially young people, and where alcohol especially is concerned, they don't think they have a problem. They think that's a problem for old people because they're now enjoying themselves. and even when they are referred to AA, especially in the old days, they would say, but that's for old people. Haven't reached to that stages yet. But I want to say today, thanks to the media and the, the technology, a lot of young people now in their teens and in their early 20s and so on are now recognizing they have a problem, and they are coming to the meetings online, because online you can remain anonymous and you don't have to declare anything to anyone else. And I know people who have been there sober for years now online. They're staying, especially since the COVID. So what is happening is that it is not sufficient for an alcoholic or a drug addict to just put down that first drink or that first smoke and think, well, look, the formula is avoid the first drink or drug one day at a time. And yes, you can start by doing that. But if you do not go back to deal with the problems that predisposed you to drug use, and I want to touch on those because a lot of people would have started using drugs, as I said, because of poor coping skills. They never learned how to deal with certain problems. They were, pampered and by their parents. You know, in the world we live now, a lot of parents have mother and father going to work, and they are not there to socialize the young ones in the family, as used to happen in the old days. And in the old days we lived in extended families where even if the parents were not there, they had to go to work. The grandparents were there, the great grandparents were there. And I must say, in my case, even in spite of all of that, I still gravitated to alcoholism. So that, but those would, why I would think that I was successful in being able to do it, because I had learned the social values that really informed my conscience, so that when for a long time, even when I was drinking, I knew that I was doing something wrong, because I grew up with a certain kind of socialization, with certain values inculcated in me. And you find that people who eventually become addicted to any alcohol or drugs, if they had a good, proper upbringing, they do far better. I can tell you as a professional, the prognosis for them is much better than the ones who did not have the benefit of a proper social upbringing. So for some, they will have to be rehabilitated, that is, reminded of the value system that they were supposed to be living by. And there are some who have to be habilitated altogether. They just didn't learn how to do it. Like you have some people now who never learn how well, that after they flush the toilet, to, to they're supposed to raise the seat before they use it, or for the men, or flush it after they finish, and things like that, or how to use the toothpaste, how to squeeze the tube. You understand? If you grow up in a certain family where you learn these values, even though you went astray using drugs, you remember them, and so rehabilitation becomes easier for you. So coming back to some of the other reasons people use drugs, and as I mentioned, and I would like to reiterate, the drinking of the alcohol and the smoking of the marijuana or the using of the cocaine is only one of the symptoms of drug addiction. There are other symptoms, and I've mentioned two so far. One of the other symptoms is poor coping skills. Because a person started using drugs early, they never learned how to cope with disappointment and disaster and bereavement and all of those. So they quickly gravitate to drugs. Then there are people with low self-esteem who do not feel good about themselves. They either think they're too short or they're too dark or whatever. And as a result, to belong to the group, the peer group, if the peer group drinks, they have to drink to retain their membership, and that's why they say, Your friends will tell me who you are. And there's a tendency to associate with people who are now using drugs, to belong to that group. And so even when sometimes you're sick and tired of being sick and tired from drug use, because you do not want to lose your membership in that circle of friends, whether they be businessmen or professionals, they have a lot of professionals and businessmen who become alcoholics. And yes, I am familiar with that, where I worked in a department at one time in social welfare, and I'm not decrying my colleagues there who's still there. They do marvelous work. But there would be some of us there who I knew are drinkers. And when we go to meetings and so on, staff meetings and or departmental meetings, we'll just look at each other and we know where after the meeting where we're going to meet. You understand? And I know now I can say a lot of these were budding alcoholics and became a full-blown alcoholics eventually. So that a lot of people, because of low self-esteem, feel that I can't say no. I don't want to disappoint my friends. I don't want to. So even though they stop drinking, they still want to retain membership just in case they go back to drink. So you'll have those people who stop drinking in the early stages and still buying drinks or liming with the same old friends, going with the river line. And once you keep doing that, you are at high risk of relapsing. Then there are other symptoms that predispose people to alcoholism and drug use, and that is selfishness. There's egotism, there's self-centeredness. All of these things are factors that predisposes a person to drug use, because these become important traits that one has to address later on in recovery. And I can tell you that from being in recovery myself, because it is my egotism that would have caused me to get into conflict with a lot of people, or to want to show off, in the rum shop. All they had to say, boy, you were a nice fella, and I would, feed my ego a little bit, and I will call along the shelf, as we say. So one has to be, these are things that predispose a person. Selfishness, always not considerate of others, don't care how other people feel, will do things and not want to say that I'm sorry. Even when I'm drinking, and people who drink, they create a lot of enemies. They mash a lot of corn, people's toes, and create a lot of problems. And because they think that, sometimes they'll say, well, or people might excuse them because, they were drunk. But they remember, and that leads to us a lot of feelings of guilt. So that all of these things combined, usually most of us, when we can't sleep in the night, it is because of some things we are feeling guilty about, even normal folks. And this, for alcoholics and drug addicts who have been practicing alcoholics and drug addicts for years, they have accumulated a whole Pandora box of things that they now will feel guilty about from way all in the past. And this is why when we discuss recovery later on, the program of recovery and so on, you look at the importance of having to make amends, having to go and do an inventory, looking at my own tendencies that got me into trouble. And a lot of times it would have been my anger because of, somebody told me the truth about something and I didn't want to deal with it. You understand? A lot of times I will develop resentment. And these would be the things that would make life very difficult for me and make using alcohol and drugs much more appealing. And a lot of people do not understand that. They think, well, look at, he's just drinking because he's irresponsible. And a lot of alcoholics and drug addicts think, they also believe that I'm just doing it for fun and I could stop when I want. But alcohol and drug addiction is said to be cunning, baffling, and powerful. And you would have hear people say, look, the last person to seem to realize they have a problem is the alcoholic. I have heard a old member in AA describe an alcoholic as a flambeau. You all know what a flambeau is a bottle with a wick that has some kerosene in it, and people used to use a long time ago for to light to show the way when they're walking in the night. Some people used to have it in their houses as well. And I read my book and did some assignment from school with a flambeau. The flambeau, why he said so is because the flambeau gives light right around. But under the flambeau base itself is dark. So the flambeau can't see itself. It could see what is wrong with everybody else. And that is typical alcoholic. Alcoholic and drug addict could see all who should stop, all who having problems with their wife and their money and their job and their bosses and their family. But he don't see his own problems. As far as he's concerned, everything is okay. Some people believe once you work for the money, you carry it and you give it to the wife, then you don't have to do anything else. They have no time with picking up the children's homework or dropping them to school or picking them up from school. They just believe they have done their share and they just come home in the evening, pull out the papers, open the fridge, take a beer, sit in front of the television. And as a result, children are being neglected because when the wife is also working, she come home, she's tired. You know, we are living in a society, especially in the East Indian homes, where the wife is still expected to be a housewife, and in spite of the fact that she's now also working out there. And a lot of men are not assisting sufficiently. Now, mind you, there are fathers out there who help. Some of them I know cook on Sundays, some of them clean the meat and package it and put it away and so on. And they help with the children occasionally. But as the alcoholism progresses in their life, you know what would happen? They would not be able to pick up these responsibilities. And I know of people who forget to go after they start taking a few beers, they forget to go pick up the children in school. I've heard of people in recovery speak about when they were drinking, they'll drop the wife to the Romania and then they go and drink with their friends in the bar and forget to go back for her. And of course, that will start a quarrel when they get home. So that there's a lot of other underlying factors that predisposes a person to alcoholism and continue to perpetuate their drinking. The low self-esteem, the poor coping skills, the egotism, the selfishness, all of those things. And then eventually they become dependent on the drug to function physically. The body becomes dependent. Especially for those people who had a chemical addiction, those who might have inherited the genetic predisposition to alcoholism, they always have it inside of them. Now, I want to say at this stage that unfortunately, there's no tablets or injection that can treat alcoholism. And a lot of people I know would wish. Science has been trying for the longest while. They've come up with all kinds of drugs to try to see whether they could. I remember one called naltrexone that they tried, but to no avail. The fact is, it has just like some other conditions, once you have crossed that compulsory borderline from social to compulsive drinking, there's no going back. There are so many people in Alcoholics Anonymous and in recovery who, after they stopped drinking for many years, some of them, I knew there's a documented case of a man who was able to stay for 25 years without taking a drink. I'm thought, well, now he had control. He demonstrated he had control over drinking and went back to drink. And within 2 years, he was dead. He was in and out of hospital. He couldn't go back to social drinking. So that I know even at the University of Toronto, the Addiction Research Foundation had been trying to come up with a harm reduction program where people could go back and drink, but not drink as bad as they used to. Educate them now how not to drink as harmful, but in my opinion, I don't think it has met with very much success because a lot of people are doing that on their own, harm reduction, trying to go back to drink, telling themselves, this will never happen with me again. I will not do that. I did that for years, telling myself every bout that, look, this time I just going to take 2 beers and I'll come back with all good intention. And I can tell you it never worked because or once you take that first drink, it's like it wakes up a demon inside of you, that asks for more and more and more drink. So I would suggest that, a lot of people out there do not try to reinvent the wheel. If you know you have tried several times, you have relapsed, then you need to get professional help. For those of you who think they need additional help, you can call me after the program at 671-3040, or you can text me at 768-5925, and I will respond to you. We are so fortunate now we have treatment facilities offered by the government at the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Center at Cora Hospital. You can go there on a Thursday, there's clinic, and they'll see you with or without a referral. We have so many non-governmental organizations like Rebirth House, New Life Ministries, Serenity Place, Heal House. These are all organizations that have been doing yeoman service in the field of substance abuse and drug addiction. You can contact them and you can get additional help. And of course, there are people like myself who I have a private practice, and in a short while, I'll be seeing a person who will be coming to see me with a similar problem. Hopefully, they keep their appointment. A lot of people I know on the day in question, they get cold feet because they have tried so many times to stop and they have failed that they don't want to stop. Well, they don't want to try to stop, I should say. They don't know how to stop. And I want to say to those especially that, look, you have reached the right point where you will be able to stop because nobody will be able to stop until they hit bottom, as we say. So that when you reach to that point where you know now that nothing has worked, nothing that you have tried, that's the time you're really ready to accept and receive help. There's no hopeless case in alcoholism or drug addiction. In fact, the more you think you are hopeless, the more ready you are to stop. Because if ever you think that you were able, you had control or you could do it, you will not want to stop. So that I know a lot of people out there. Now, if you have doubts whether you're an alcoholic or not, you can come in and get a re-evaluation. You can get an evaluation. If you're alcoholic, I will tell you so. If you're not, I will tell you you're not. And there are other places you can go. There's a clinic in South at the San Fernando Hospital on a Monday that you can go and get an evaluation done if you think you're an alcoholic. And so I want to thank again Radio and TV Jagriti. They have just celebrated their 18th anniversary. And again, I want to repeat, I am very grateful to have been associated with this media house. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank Mr. Vijay Maharaj in particular, and the organization for giving this airtime free of charge as a community service. And I want to let any one of you know, if you have a problem, yes, you can call the numbers on your screen. They will give you my number, or you can call the numbers I just told you. It's on your screen as well. And I would be willing to help you. We have meetings now. Physical meetings have resumed in the various communities, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and Narcotics Anonymous meetings. And we also have meetings online every night. So any of you who wish to learn more about this disease, if you're not an alcoholic, but you would like to know more and someone who's an alcoholic, you can go to my YouTube channel, that's Ramnaresh Dwarika, Addiction and Recovery Program, and you will be able to access all the programs that have been done in the past years. And if you have questions, you can raise them in the comments. I will respond to them, or you can call me or text me with your questions. I want to thank again the organization and the staff for hosting this meeting. And I want to remind you that this program will be aired again tonight at 10 p.m. and it will be on next Thursday, sorry, at 9 a.m. So that I want to thank all of you who have been listening and supporting the program, and to remind you again, the program is next week, Thursday at 9 a.m., between 9 to 10 a.m., and I'll see you then. So thank you for staying with me and for listening to the program. Thank you very much.